achieved.
Welcome back to Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions. As always, I am your host, Scott Johnson, and on this episode of the show, we're taking a look at the upcoming UFC 179 event, which will take place on October 25th from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, and feature the rematch between the featherweight champion Jose Aldo and title challenger Chad Mendes. I'll be giving you my 5 main card predictions on this episode of the show. All of my preliminary breakdowns will be at kamikazeoverdrive.net. I just wanted to give you a quick heads up. We did have a long layoff there, as I mentioned before. I was expecting my second child. I can say that mom and new baby are wonderful and fine. We had a brand new baby boy, Ace Barrett. So pretty excited. I have 2 sons now, which is pretty awesome, and going to keep me very busy going forward. So pretty excited about that. Back to the fighting. I'm coming off a pretty decent UFC Fight Night 54 event, which took place in Halifax. I went 9-3 overall. Pretty solid. Not a lot of upsets on that card, so I don't want to bank too much on that. But I'm really looking forward to this event. I got 5 pretty good breakdowns. Also, as the bet packs will be available at kamikazeoverdrive.net for $10, so consider purchasing them. The public picks are also posted. Also, the prediction panel will be available. You can check out those guys who've been doing some pretty good, impressive predictions of their own. Without further ado, let's head to the first pick. To start the card, we're in the UFC's lightweight divisions. Diego Ferreira, 10-0, undefeated, takes on Beneil Dariush, 8-1. Dariush is coming off the first loss of his career. Actually, he's coming off a win after the first loss of his career, which is always a big thing for a fighter to get back in the win column after suffering that first defeat. Conversely, Ferreira has yet to lose. Still has some question marks about, to me, there's still some question marks about what kind of fighter you are until you've actually suffered that first defeat of your career and rebounded. Both guys had very recent fights with Ramsey Nijem, which is interesting to take a look at. Dariush lost by TKO, while Ferreira consequently won by TKO in his last fight. Both highly regarded grapplers. Dariush, a BJJ black belt with 5 wins by submission, including both of his UFC victories. For Ferreira, he's a third-degree BJJ black belt, 6 wins by submission, including his debut over Colton Smith in just under, I think it was 38 seconds when he submitted Smith by. Dariush, he really focuses his attack on transitioning to back mount, especially against Tony Martin in his last fight. And overall, he does have, I think, 2 wins by rear naked choke, possibly 3. For Ferreira, he's a very aggressive guard player. Again, a very strong top position fighter like Ramsey Nijem really couldn't stay on top. Every time he took him down, he had to hop right off because how aggressive Ferreira was and started attacking and chaining transitions and submissions together once the fight hit the mat. Unfortunately, that fight Ferreira was getting taken down when he came forward against Nijem and against Dariush. That could be his key to success if he can defend on the mat, is scoring those takedowns when Ferreira comes forward. Ferreira will work to the back as well. He has 3 wins by rear naked choke, but I think he's a better guard player than Dariush is. In this matchup, the grappling could cancel out. We've seen very strong grapplers just completely negate those skills, and I think if it rains on the feet, I think the advantage switches to the Brazilian. Now, Dariush, he's kind of a stiff striker, doesn't have a great technique, not at least the flowing technical approach. He was getting outworked by Tony Martin, at least early on, and getting tagged with some pretty big shots. He was having to deal with a lot of reach and lunging into his strikes, overextending. He did try and fire off a big overhand right with minimal success. He tends to attack in straight lines, which makes him very counterable. He was struggling with the pressure of Martin. He also got knocked out by Ramsey Nijem, who's not an elite striker by any stretch of the imagination. And he got rocked a couple times during exchanges against Nijem, which is certainly a concern. He has a tendency to hold his hands low, and overall he's 2-1 in fights that are ended by knockout, so not a great win-loss record on the feet. He did land some kicks against Martin, seemed to be his best striking technique overall. For Ferreira, he's very aggressive. He's a little bit wild, but he certainly is dangerous. He throws a variety of techniques. He has some good kicks as well. Just a single win by knockout, which happens to be his last fight, came over Nijem. He hurt him early in that fight, eventually finished him with a counter when Ramsey came forward. It was pretty well put together. I think Ferreira's aggression on the feet is going to give Dariush all kinds of trouble, especially if there's no grappling aspect to it, or if Dariush can't establish his grappling game. I really can't see Dariush having much success on top of Ferreira unless he tires out. But the Brazilian is 4-0 in fights that go to decision, while Dariush is 1-0, so that would suggest that Ferreira is capable of going a full 3 rounds. Keep in mind this fight is in Brazil. If it's a close decision, I wouldn't be surprised if it goes to Diego. But my prediction is Diego Ferreira to defeat Beneil Dariush by submission, probably after hurting him on the feet. In the next prediction of the night, I'll go down to the 145-pounders as Darren, the Damage Elkins, 18-4-0, battles Lucas Mineiro Martins with a record of 15-1. What we have here is a classic wrestler versus striker pairing. Martins 10 wins by knockout. He's looking to keep this fight standing and use his Muay Thai. That's his strength. He scored knockout wins of Jeremy Larson and Alex White, both of them actually coming in the third round, which is pretty impressive, and those were both back-and-forth striking-based wars. He also dropped Junior Hernandez pretty quick in that fight before eventually submitting him. He's very aggressive on the feet. He likes to stand and trade. 4.36 strikes landed per minute, so a pretty high output rate, but he's very hittable. He actually gets tagged at a slightly higher rate of 4.74 strikes absorbed. He kind of, his approach, he really counts on his chin holding up, even though he tends to raise it up just a little bit when he's under attack, but so far it's held up for him. Elkins is a serviceable striker. He can throw, decent hands. 7 wins by knockout. We saw him stop Antonio Carvalho standing. He has been stopped twice overall, knocked out by Chad Mendes, and he was nearly stopped by Diego Brandao, if you want to go back a little bit. For the most part, he does not want to stand and trade with Martins in this matchup. He did lose to Jeremy Stevens because he couldn't get the fight to the ground. He was 0 for 9 on takedown attempts, forced to strike, which obviously isn't his strong suit. Elkins overall 7-1 fights that end in decision. He comes from a collegiate wrestling background, really takes on that embrace the grind approach. I'm sure Joe Rogan will mention that at least once, if not 5 times during the fight. He has multiple wins based on his top control pressure. Again, the Brandao fight, Naoyuki, who's very aggressive off his back. Also, Steven Seiler's a pretty tough guy to deal with on the mat. He really breaks guys down. He remains active on top. He only averages 2.04 takedowns at a 30% completion rate, but it's because he's so capable of getting guys down and then remaining on top of them, as he only needs that one completion to control an entire round. He did score 6 takedowns against Steven Seiler, which is his UFC high. Very rarely ever scores one or two per fight. That's about it. Martins has shown the ability to end fights late, which is something that is impressive if he can hold on and survive the early goings on. Even if Elkins gets 2 rounds in the books, it's far from over. He has 7 stoppage wins actually overall after the first round, which is pretty darn impressive. When he fought Jeremy Larson, he was taken down twice. He does have 4 submission wins, but just like Elkins doesn't want to be on the feet, Martins does not want to be on his back in this matchup. He's never faced an American wrestler when you look at his resume like Elkins, which is something that's always difficult when he faced for the very first time. Martins broke under the pressure of the strikes from Edson Barbosa, and he tapped out to strikes. I know that took place at lightweight, but that still questions his ability to hold up under the type of grinding, bust him up style Darren Elkins is going to bring on the mat. So my prediction is Darren Elkins to defeat Lucas Martins by decision. Now we've got the first of 2 main card fights take place in the UFC's light heavyweight division, as the number 15th ranked Fabio Maldonado, 21-7-0, battles 22-5-3 Hans Stringer of the Netherlands. This is the 6th straight fight in Brazil overall in the UFC for Fabio. He has losses at either end, losing to Glover Teixeira and recently getting stopped by Stipe Miocic at heavyweight. In between, he beat John Valente, Roger Holette, and Joey Beltran, also all in Brazil. For Stringer, he actually debuted in Brazil and won a split decision against Francimar Barroso, which is pretty impressive considering a lot of times we see close decisions go the way of the hometown favorite or the local guy. For this matchup, both guys have very specific styles that they're going to want to impose and bring to bear, and obviously whoever does that better is going to win the fight. Maldonado, we all know what he wants to do. He can be entertaining. He's not the most technically sound guy, but he wants to box and trade punches and just, have kind of that tough man slug-it-out competition. He doesn't have massive one-punch knockout power, even though he has 12 wins by knockout on his resume. He's more of one of these death by accumulation. 6.18 strikes landed per minute, works the body shots exceptionally well, and can really take away a fighter's cardio. Even if they have fairly good cardio, he can take that away from him by continually landing it inside. On the flip side, he's very hittable. He has absolutely porous defense. 4.07 strikes absorbed per minute. It's almost like and he challenges guys. He punches himself in the chin, says, come on, hit me. He's known for having a good chin, for the most part being very durable, but the question is a career of getting banged and smacked around eventually is going to catch up to you. That's not an ideal way to do it. He took a ton of damage against Glover Teixeira, almost to his detriment. The fight should have been stopped much earlier. Obviously, that quick knockout against Stipe Miocic, but again, consider that's heavyweight power, something that Fabio is not used to and not going to experience in most situations when fighting at light heavyweight. For Hans Stringer, 9 wins by knockout, 8 wins by submission, and 5 decision wins. He's got a far more diverse winning totals. So you see he's capable of winning fights in different fashions compared to Fabio Maldonado. His focus, though, in this matchup will be to punch his way into the clinch and either control his opponent on the cage or on the mat. He does come from a BJJ background. He was able to get the better of Francimar Barrosa in most of the grappling exchanges, considering Francimar Barrosa is a pretty good grappler and comes with a Nova União camp, who's known for their wrestling, which is pretty solid. He had a lot of success grinding him into the cage, and it wasn't an exciting fight. It wasn't a great fight, but he was effective at what he did. When he did get the fight to the mat, he had solid shots from inside the guard, landed some pretty good, did some pretty good damage, and was able to control the fight on the ground. He threw a pretty multifaceted attack against Barrosa. Mixed up his striking and grappling fairly effectively. That should be an advantage to him against Fabio, who's mainly going to strike and not going to look to take him down or tie him up. Not a technical striker, though. He was winging an overhand right, but what he does, it's workable with how he approaches the fight game. One thing with Hans Stringer, though, he was tired in that matchup, which you can attribute to octagon jitters being a factor, but he's also had some cardio issues in other fights and appears to slow down. It's not like he's winded beyond all capabilities, but he certainly does appear to slow down. And we have seen the heat in Brazilian arenas being an issue before. Fabio was able to beat Gian Valente because of that. Valente dominated the early round and a half and then was absolutely exhausted. It was very hot in the arena. They kept talking about that, slowed down and lost the fight in the second half because of it. We'll have to see if that holds up here. I would think in a bigger venue in Rio de Janeiro, it shouldn't be quite as big an issue. Now, Fabio can strike at short range, but his grappling defense is terrible. He was getting absolutely controlled on the fence by Joey Beltran in a fight I felt he absolutely lost and was gifted a decision for some unknown reason. He actually invites fighters to engage and attack him first. He gets hit too much for my liking, and if you give up position to Hans Stringer, he's going to grind you into the cage. Again, Fabio struggles off his back and can be taken down, and that's an issue as well. Hans, he needs to get 2 rounds in the bag early on and hang on if he gets tired. Fabio's capable of making those late rallies, but I think Hans will be able to use his grinding approach and just simply get the better of him. The Brazilian decision factor is a concern. My prediction is Hans Stringer to defeat Fabio Maldonado by decision. In the co-main event of the evening, we again remain in the light heavyweight division as the number 4 ranked Glover Teixeira, 22-3-0, battles the number 6 ranked Mr. Wonderful Phil Davis with a record of 12 wins, 2 losses, and a single no contest. That's a big fight in the division looking for future title challengers. For Glover Teixeira, he's already fought and got his shot for the title, but certainly could earn another shot down the road considering the way John Jones seems to clear guys out if he remains champion. On the other side, we had Phil Davis, who was closing in on a shot at the title, but took a massive step or two backwards with his loss to Rumble Johnson. But obviously Rumble Johnson, his issues could preclude him from ever fighting in the UFC and certainly not fighting for a title in the near future, which kind of moves Phil Davis back up the queue by 1. Both guys fought and lost UFC 172 in their most recent matchups, which is certainly, so they're in the same time frame at least. And you look at Phil Davis' record, he's had a lot of success fighting against Brazilians. This is his 3rd time fighting in Rio, where he beat Lyoto Machida and he beat Wagner Prada, which is certainly a far less impressive win. He also has wins over Vinny Magalesh and Little Nog, which took place on American soil. For Glover Teixeira, until he fought John Jones, his best opponent that he defeated was Ryan Bader. He had fought a lot of guys that were past their prime or not notable. But the Bader fight was pretty impressive. He got tagged in that matchup, but nonetheless he got the victory. So Phil Davis is a pretty high, big-time fight for him as well. We have kind of a clash here. We have a wrestler in Phil Davis and against a BJJ guy in Glover Teixeira. Both guys are capable in the other's area of expertise, but still we have that clash of styles here. For Davis, he absolutely needs to get this fight to the mat. He's an elite-level NCAA Division I wrestler, BJJ purple belt actually as well, and he has 4 wins by submission. Averages 2.38 takedowns at a 35% completion rate. We saw him land 2 takedowns against Lyoto Machida, 4 against Little Nog, and he even took Rashad Evans down twice, which is pretty impressive. But when he fought Rumble Johnson, he absolutely struggled to find any success with his wrestling, going 0 for 8, and he had trouble getting Nog down early in that fight, landing only 4 takedowns on 11 tries. He went 0 for 5 in round 1, so he had really to be persistent, so it's certainly not like he's just going to walk in and take everybody and anybody he wants to take down. There have been plenty of examples where he has struggled to execute. The keys to his success, obviously, is his takedowns, and against Rashad Evans and Rumble Johnson, his lack of success forced him to rely primarily on his striking. And while he has some solid leg kicks and body kicks, and his hands, he's working on them to improve, he's just not good enough to compete at this level without his wrestling being a major factor. Against Lyoto Machida, he only went 2 for 10 in his attempts. He landed next to nothing, though. The big thing there was that Machida didn't do enough. He didn't push the pressure enough, didn't engage and attack enough to take the decision that was absolutely there for him to take. For Glover Teixeira, he's got some pretty good offensive grappling. 2.86 takedowns so far in the UFC at a 50% completion rate. Solid submission and ground and pound capabilities. But I think he's going to struggle to score takedowns against Davis. I don't think it's going to be a huge factor. The question is, can Davis get Glover off his feet? Or can Glover keep it standing? Glover is a BJJ black belt, 6 wins by submission overall, very dangerous grappler, 75% takedown defense. John Jones did take him down 3 times on 6 tries. Prior to that, Bader was 0 for 1, and Rampage Jackson was 0 for 4. But Phil Davis, again, is another question altogether. The difference between Jones and Davis is that Davis John Jones able to set his takedowns up with his striking, get himself in a position to put the fight in the ground. Davis not there with his striking yet to do that. Obviously, Davis, he does a great job of limiting his opponents, 1.36 strikes per minute versus Glover, who gets tagged rate of 3.77. Again, that's contingent on his wrestling. I keep talking about that, but I think that's going to be the crux of this matchup. Offensively, Davis doesn't land, he lands a decent amount, 5.89 strikes landed per minute, but compared to Glover, who lands 5, that's a big difference. And again, he needs his wrestling to be successful. Glover has excellent boxing, 13 wins by knockout, so he certainly has the power advantage, superior technique, and superior variety of striking as well. Davis seemed to simply back off with the power of Rumble Johnson, seemed more and more disinterested in engaging in that matchup. I think it'll be the case here again. I think Glover's going to land strikes, defend takedowns. I think Davis will survive this matchup and certainly not get knocked out like he did against Rashad Evans, like he did against Rumble Johnson. He'll go into a defensive shell, but that he's not going to win. So my prediction is Glover Teixeira to defeat Phil Davis by decision. We now move to the main event of the evening in the UFC's featherweight division with the title on the line as the champion, Jose Aldo, 24-1-0. Battles the number 1 ranked challenger, Chad Money Mendes, with a record of 16-1. Lots of history and bad blood between these two guys and their camps. First scheduled, the first rematch was originally scheduled for UFC 176 in California, which was Chad Mendes' turf. Aldo became injured. The event was canceled as a result. And interesting enough, like Mendes said, this fight was moved to Brazil, where obviously it favored the champion, which usually it should. A lot of back and forth about injuries and PEDs between these two guys and some bad blood in the media. Also, you look at Alpha Male, finally getting that big win with TJ Dillashaw, taking out Renan Barão to claim the bantamweight title. Prior to that, Nova was 4-0 in title fights against Alpha Male competitors. Plus, you go back to the first meeting we had in the fence grab that allowed Aldo to eventually get in a position to land the knockout knee that finished Mendes' night. So a lot going into this matchup. Now, the first fight took place at UFC 142 in early 2012. Quick synopsis of that matchup. It only didn't quite last a full round. No takedown attempts early from Chad Mendes. A lot of low kicks. Had trouble reaching with his hands. Was coming up short generally. First single leg attempt failed. We did eventually see Aldo attempt a kick. Led to a takedown attempt again. Clinch, fence grab, knee, knockout win for Jose Aldo. Mendes did get some back control along the cage and was kneeing the thighs. I wonder if that's part of the game plan, if he can establish that back control and try and break down and take away some of Aldo's speed and his balance and base. But when it comes right down to Aldo's balance and height seemed to giving Mendes a lot of trouble to score takedowns. He had a lot of opportunities to take him down and simply could not get him off his feet, except for the one that obviously appeared to grab the cage to prevent it. Since that fight, Aldo's 3-0 with 3 more title defenses against the Korean Zombie, Frank Yeager, and Ricardo Lamas, all impressive. Mendes 5-0, defeating Cody McKenzie, Yahtzee Meza, Darren Elkins, Clay Guida, and most recently Nick Lentz. So definitely Mendes more fights, Aldo obviously higher caliber opponents. Looking at the game plan, Aldo wants to keep this fight standing and use his striking. Not too hard to discern here. Mendes wants to get this fight to the ground, absolutely. Yeah, for Mendes to do that and get this fight to the ground, he has to close the distance, get his hands on Aldo, take him down, and keep him down. That's all those things that have to be part of his game plan for him to be successful. They're all incredibly difficult because A, all his defensive skills are fantastic, and B, his offensive capabilities are there as well. As we saw, that knee out of nowhere is a huge weapon that he, or anything, elbows, anything he can land when Mendes thinks he's being offensive and in a position that he wants to be in, bam, it changes very quickly. At a distance, look for Aldo to land leg kicks, combinations in tight elbows, knees, and that clinch control he can do. I don't expect to see Aldo looking for a takedown, but you never know. He might try and show Chad Mendes, I can do what you can do, only better. Now, a lot has been made out of Chad Mendes' striking improvements, working with Dwayne Ludwig along with the other alpha male guys. We did see TJ Dillashaw, what he was able to do against Renan Barão, and there's no doubt he's made massive strides. But, as impressive as he was until he beats Barão again, or possibly fights and beats Dominic Cruz, I still want to see a second execution of those skills. Mendes has looked good since his fights against Aldo. 4 KOs after losing a long string of decisions, after fighting in a long string of decisions and winning a long string of decisions. But again, you consider who he did it against. He did it against other wrestlers and lower level guys. Had he outstruck Cub Swanson or even Ricardo Lamas or the Korean Zombie, that would be more convincing and improve and capable and show me that he's ready to fight Aldo and hang on that level. capable of hanging on that level and add a capable striking game to his already pretty solid wrestling capabilities. Now, Aldo has been criticized for not finishing. Other than the Korean Zombie injury that led to a finish, the Mendes finish was his only other victory inside the distance in his last 6 fights since coming into the UFC, which isn't overly impressive. So I expect he'll be motivated here, along with all the bad blood. Mendes didn't look that great in his last fight. He needs to be at his best here. For him to win, he has to take Aldo down, grind him, and tax his cardio. If he can have moderate success early with his wrestling, maybe win one of the first 3 rounds, hopefully win one of the first 3 rounds for his sake, that should allow him to take control in rounds 4 or 5 and land more takedowns at will. We saw what Mark Hominick was able to do in the last round. I would think Mendes could have more success earlier on. On the flip side, Aldo is still way ahead of him on the feet. I was impressed with his takedown defense, and Mendes had a few different chances and no success. I think Aldo will have success defending. Mendes not going to be able to take him down. Most epic fights that usually are followed by rematches have rematches that end very quickly. The first fight wasn't long or really epic. Okay, this is a theory I have. So I'm going to look at the reverse here. I think Aldo beats him up with leg kicks like he did to Uriah Faber, avoids the takedowns, lands big strikes, better strikes, more superior strikes, might play it safe again. He might go for the finish because he's in Brazil and fired up, but my prediction is Jose Aldo to defeat Chad Mendes by decision. So those are my 5 main card predictions for UFC 179. Yes, I think I took 4 decisions on the main card, which is difficult. I also picked against 2 Brazilians on the main card, which is also a tough call. All of my preliminary breakdowns will be available at KamikazeOverdrive.net. So please check them out. Consider buying the bet packs as well. I've been having a lot more success lately, and had UFC 177 was not that far away, and it cashed out close to $4,000, I believe, off the top of my head, between 3 and 4, which was pretty huge. Nonetheless, as always, thank you very much for listening. It's been a whirlwind. We actually did a 2-week break and then another double event with 2 in 1 day, which gives me a lot of time to prepare for that. Either way, as always, thank you very much, guys. Kamikaze Overdrive MMA predictions.